this next section, which we are actually going to be sending out on the World Wide Web. We had, when I walked into the room, we had over 500 people who were registered that will be joining us. They will also be submitting questions for our moderator, which is going to be up here on the screen. So without further ado, let me wrap up the EVS26 portion, this portion of the program, with a recap of this particular event. And this is traditional in EVS. We always do a video montage. Some of you will recognize yourselves in the video. So please. Well, I'm pleased to welcome you all that are joining us from around the world to the first ever live webcast session from EVS26 in Los Angeles. Welcome to the GoElectricDrive Plenary. This is the final session of our 4-day event where the best and brightest minds from around the globe have been discussing how to accelerate the adoption of electric drive. The video that you just saw gives you some sense not only of the hard work that's been done here in Los Angeles, but also how much fun we've been having as well. But we've saved perhaps the most important topic of all for today, which is how to capture hearts and minds. Said differently, we want to talk about how to convey the enthusiasm that we all have here for electric drive and driving electrically with all of you. Those joining us now, I'm Brian Wynn. I'm president of the Electric Drive Transportation Association, the host organization of this event. And I'm pleased to be able to share with you the exciting developments coming from this industry. We have an expert panel that will be providing some insights for you. But first, I would like to put this effort into context. We've been obliged over the past 40 years to build a logical, fact-based case for the electric car. It was the obvious way to explain the tremendous advances and strides that we've made. It's been necessary to defend against misinformation that has been spreading widely, even today when our advances are as great as they've been. I would venture to say that over the past few decades, we've created the most fact-based, logical argument in favor of a car that's ever been seen in the automotive business. Lately, I've begun to wonder if we might have allowed logic, impressive though it may be, to get in the way of something more important. The simple, undeniable, unwavering truth that electric cars are fun to drive. I've never seen anybody, a technology buff, an environmental activist, pedal to the metal driving enthusiast, or soccer mom, step out from behind the wheel of an electric vehicle without a smile on their face, an ear-to-ear grin. We call it the EV smile. You got to smile when you say that. Simple expression, and it's heard in all languages. That's really cool. Lately, it struck me that the people that matter most, consumers, need something beyond a logical argument. Once all the facts line up, we want something more. We want to love our car. Cars are a means of self-expression, a tool of personal freedom, a centerpiece of our culture, whether it's in Baltimore, Beijing, Buenos Aires, or Bordeaux. And you don't have to look any further than that EV smile to know that the love of the electric car is catching on. We've already won the battle of the mind. It's now time to turn our attention to the heart. It's time to look beyond the logic of the electric car and understand what it takes for more people to fall in love with the electric car. Toward that end, I'm delighted to introduce our fabulous panel this morning, which is made up of experts on this subject. They each have a unique experience and perspective that will help us get to the heart of the matter. Please join me in welcoming our panelists, Bob Lutz, former Vice Chairman of General Motors and President and CEO of Lutz Communications. Scott Cronce, Chief Technology Officer for Electronic Arts. Andy Palmer, Executive Vice President of Nissan. And Dean Devlin, President of Electric Entertainment. I'm also very pleased to introduce our moderator for today, Simon Marks, President and Chief Correspondent for the award-winning Feature Story News. Please welcome Simon Marks to the stage.
Thank you very much indeed, Brian, not just for the introduction, but for inviting me here in the first place to moderate this discussion. And let me start by welcoming our terrific panel here, and also welcoming all of you in the hall and everybody who's joining us from around the world online. Those of you here in the room and those of you watching our webcast can submit questions to the panel by using Twitter. Simply hop on Twitter, use the hashtag EVS26. We're going to go through the questions, pick some of them, and come to them a little bit later. And remember, you've got to be pithy, because you've only got 140 characters with which to write your question. So that's the hashtag EVS26. So we have here two industry luminaries from the automotive world, Andy Palmer from Nissan and Bob Lutz from formerly of GM, now at Lutz Communications, and also two enthused and long-time EV owners who come from slightly different worlds. Dean Devlin, screenwriter, producer, director with numerous credits to his name, most relevant perhaps for this discussion, Who Killed the Electric Car? And Scott Cronce from Electronic Arts, one of the world's leading developers of video games, for which my children, Scott, thank you. My wife, not so much. I want to cover a lot of ground in the next 45 minutes, but I'm going to start with Andy Palmer. He has traveled all around the world to be with us today, and since we have a quorum of Brits on the panel, it makes sense, of course, to start with Andy. Andy, let's talk about the current state of play. On the one hand, we have an EV industry that feels like it's on the cusp of greatness. I think that's been palpable here this week. On the other hand, you're looking at April sales figures that showed Nissan selling 370 units of the Leaf. Why are you still feeling positive about winning those hearts and minds?
Well, I think overall, we can't look at sales on a month-by-month basis. I mean, we've sold 28,000 Leafs around the world to date. We expect to sell something in the order of 40,000 this calendar year. And that's basically as many as we can make right now. So far, we've been very much targeting the early adopters, and they're there in droves around the world. You know, we've not rolled out the car beyond basically the States, Japan, and a relatively few number of countries in Europe. The key for us, and the key challenge for us, is when we've got the capacity for Leaf in the US, which is later this year, in the UK for Europe, and the installed capacity in Japan. That's when we have the capability to make 150,000 Leafs per year, and that's really at the moment at which we have to demonstrate that the demand is there, not only for the early adopters, but also for the pragmatic majority, those people that can look at the car and say, you know, it makes sense for me. I don't have a range anxiety problem. 32% of drivers in Europe never, not occasionally, 32% of drivers in Europe never exceed 100 kilometers a day. So from a very pragmatic point of view, when you look at the cost of charging versus the cost of purchasing, it obviously makes an enormous amount of sense for a large number of people to start to buy. Now, beyond the pragmatism, I think then you've also got the smile. The fact that these cars are such great fun to drive, and winning the hearts and minds of people is about not only telling the pragmatic story, but also getting people emotionally involved with the vehicle. And obviously, as we come to the point where we start manufacturing in the United States and Europe, and the volume needs to go up, that's when Nissan needs to start stepping up and trying to tell the numerous stories that exist for the merits of the electric car, but in bite-sized chunks that people can really absorb and understand.
I want to come back to the smile in a little while, but last year you projected sales of, I think, 25,000 Leafs. You came in at 9,000. 9,000 is clearly not shabby, perfectly respectable number, but you have to deal with journalists like me out there, industry detractors, that are saying, well, they said they would sell 25,000 and they only sold 9,000. Was that a learning experience, and how do you handle the whole concept of expectations?
I mean, there was a learning experience for certain. I mean, we had to learn how to mass-produce batteries to start with, and there was early issues with ramping up to full production volume. We had a little problem in Japan, you remember, an earthquake, which wiped out our supply chain for the best part of 3 months. So we simply couldn't make cars for a lot of that period. That doesn't explain the whole of the shortfall, but it explains the vast majority of the shortfall to our prediction. The yen has not been too kind to us, to be frank. I mean, we're talking about a yen right now that's sitting at around 80 yen to the dollar. Leaf is 100% made in in Japan and exported today. So Forex hasn't been kind to us. But again, that's an issue. Hopefully no more earthquakes. Hopefully. From the end of the year, our yen exposure is basically eliminated. We're manufacturing in the United States with US suppliers, in the UK with European suppliers. So that's where we can afford to start pushing a little more.
And you've been trying to extend that EV smile here this week with the Infiniti LE. Yeah. How does it differ from the Leaf?
Well, it's gorgeous. I mean,
but Andy, surely so is the Leaf.
So is the Leaf, but they're very different. They're very different products. Of course, one's Nissan, one's Infiniti. There's a long story which I won't bore everybody about that car, but the gestation of that car has been quite difficult. You're taking basically Leaf underpinnings, which is a hatchback, and as Bob will know, the challenges of turning a hatchback into a sedan. Sedan normally sits much lower on the ground. It has a completely different stance. Re-engineering the vehicle to have that stance has been quite significant. And then how to make it look like and truly be an Infiniti has been a real challenge for us. So, not just in the battery and the electronics, but we've completely re-engineered the way that we press aluminum, I have to remember my accents, aluminum panels for that vehicle so that we get the styling lines as sharp as possible. A technology that we didn't have internally that we've had to invent to allow us to execute the styling that you've seen. It's one of I launch 51 cars in the next 5 years. That car's my favourite.
Terrific. Bob Lutz, let me put something to you that you said at the end of the Revenge of the Electric Car and see if you think it still stands. The American people, you said, will go where the price of gas goes. And you were saying that when the movie was made, at the time when gas was $2.80 a gallon. Mm-hmm. They're now selling it just over the street here in Los Angeles at $4.79 a gallon for economy. Does that fact alone, in your mind, suggest that those sales figures of Andes and the other manufacturers are about to take off?
Yes and no. The price of fuel is a huge factor in making the EV viable, because while there's about 5% of Americans that will buy an EV for societal or environmental reasons. The other 95% say, what's in it for me? And right now, the what's in it for me question can only be answered favorably for the EV by like via full-size pickup trucks, full-size vans that consume so much fuel. In Europe, interestingly enough, the equation will tip towards the electric vehicle much faster because of $9 a gallon gasoline. So the price of fuel is definitely a factor. And I would say that the number one inhibitor to greater EV sales in the United States is that the limited range of the purely battery-powered vehicle. You know, a real-world 80 to 100 miles at a reasonable price, or 300 miles in the case of Tesla, but you're talking over $100,000. That just isn't realistic yet for the average American family. So this will converge. The price will go down, energy storage will go up, and we will have 200 to 300 mile range in a purely battery-powered vehicle that will be no more expensive than an internal combustion vehicle. At that will be the real tipping point. But right now, while the economics of the EV are improving very rapidly, they're not there yet. And they're not there in motorcycles either. I own 2 electric maxi scooters. I enjoy them very much. One's got a range of 40 miles, one's got a range of 70 miles. But they both cost roughly 3 times as much as a low-cost gasoline-powered scooter. And a lot of people just look at that and they say, I love the electrics, I'll buy one when they're priced reasonably.
So we had earlier in the week J.B. Straubel from Tesla on this very stage, and he said, look, EVs are only going to go mainstream when we get the price of batteries down.
That's exactly right.
That's mission critical.
The price-value relationship of EVs has got to become better. It's as simple as that. Range has got to go up, price has got to come down. And you look at lithium-ion. When we started on the Volt, lithium-ion was about $2,000 per kilowatt hour. Through the Volt program, it came down. The last I heard, it's roughly, the last figure I heard, not GM, a generalized figure, is about $380 per kilowatt hour. And I think it's going to go down from there. And energy storage is going to go up. Again, it's going to be 2 things. Price of batteries comes down, energy storage has to go up.
Dean Devlin and Scott Cronce, you are both in different ways in the entertainment industry and presumably in your respective fields, both in large measure trying to give the public what the public wants. Dean, how do you encourage the industry to persuade more people to drive electric?
Well, I don't think I have any influence over the car industry to influence them in any way.
You do today.
I always try to include electric vehicles in my productions and my TV shows and stuff. For me, I have to say, look, I've been driving electric cars or hybrid cars exclusively for 14 years. I love these cars. I don't drive them because I am an environmentalist. I drive them because they're incredible cars, because they're fun, because they're great. I think that the Volt is an amazing car. I really think it's a groundbreaking car. I think the Leaf is an incredible car. I think these are really gigantic breakthrough cars, but they're sold as medicine. And I think that's a huge problem. And forgive me for being critical, guys, but I look at the car of the Volt and I think, wow, I really want that car when I see it, when I drive it. I watch these ads, and one ad has a guy driving to a bathroom at a gas station, and a kid saying, "Why are you at a gas station? You have an electric car." Part of the fun of that car is I don't have to go to the gas station. I'm going to go to the gas station to use the bathroom? What? What are you selling? The other big ad for the car, on the Super Bowl, there was this beautifully made ad, but it didn't show the finished car, which is beautiful. It showed the car being assembled on Main Street, USA, and a narrator saying, "This isn't the car we wanted to build, it's the car we had to build." What? I was stunned seeing that commercial. What do you mean you had to build it? You didn't want to build it, you had to build it? You built something freaking amazing. We should be selling how much fun these things are. And again, in all due respect, there's a billboard on Highland for the Nissan Leaf, and the slug line is electric. I mean, could you imagine if we sold Porsches saying unleaded? I mean, we don't do that. Cars are sold sliding sideways with girls in bikinis and guys driving on windy roads. These are the coolest cars in the world. They should be sold like iPads.
Scott, let me ask you if you feel the same way. We heard again from this podium earlier in the week that great Steve Jobs quote, "People don't know what they want until you show them." Your business, video games, has incredibly successfully excited the passions of people who didn't know that their passions for video games were out there to be excited. How do you get into the passion excitement business, and what can the EV industry learn from your expertise?
So EV-wise, I think I'm the same way. I don't drive them because they're going to save the planet. I think they're really, really cool. And I think we're at an age where our cars have enough sensors, computers, and displays in it that it becomes an entertainment platform. So we need to figure out how we can actually surprise people. So that's what we do in the gaming industry. We do magic. So we make them be the center of that entertainment. So they're the star. We make sure that they're in charge of it. We try to get them immersed in it and allow them to do any kind of customization. So when you look at an EV, we have any car today with telematics, so they're always connected. You can do fun things with all those sensors and the displays that you have. But on top of that, there's some unique stuff you can do on an EV you can't do in any other car. So sound is 50% of the entertainment experience. What we use it for today is these warning beeps when you're at slow speeds. So why can't we let people download any engine sound they want, real or fantasy, and still be well within any kind of regulation? Same thing with the way it drives. So we give them an eco mode and a drive mode, basically 2 knobs, maybe 3 knobs if you've got enough in it, which do things with the regenerative braking. We could actually give them the ability to completely configure the handling of their car, well, within the legal limits. But you could have a lot of fun with that. And those are the types of things that surprise you and make you laugh and make you think, wow, this is really cool. I don't have that in any other vehicle.
Andy, I want to give you a chance to defend your creative.
Thank you.
And to be fair to Andy, I mean, there has been a fantastic video playing in the hall this week showing the guy about to have dental surgery in the dental chair, and the dentist is there and he starts the drill up with an internal combustion engine. I mean, are we going to see more of that slicker marketing than the kind of marketing Dean was talking about?
Yeah, I'm firing my agency and employing him. And look, I mean, there are some cool adverts out there, but it's a fact. Let's go back when we first launched the electric vehicle. Let's be frank. The majority of the industry thought we'd lost our brains. They thought we were nuts. One very eminent CEO of a Japanese car company said electric cars are for golf courses. Some people still do. We felt that the first part of our communication needed to be about education, about frankly, bringing the subjects to the fore of range anxiety. Most people talk about range anxiety. We took the view that we needed to explain range anxiety, for example, but. You're right. As you go forward and as you start to look for mass sales, and we spent $4 billion bringing the electric vehicle to market, obviously we need to sell a lot. We need to move. We need to motivate people emotionally, and there's a lot of opportunity there. And yeah, you saw the motor being demonstrated on a hairdryer and on a dentist. That was us having a little bit of fun. And there are a number of other ads around that we're doing for around the world, which also exploit that fun.
Bob Lutz, we were talking about exciting the passions of people. There are other people in this country at the moment trying to excite the passions of people in a different way, and they're running for elected office. It's an election year in the United States. Do you worry the EV is becoming a political football? And if it is, what does the industry do, what do consumers do about attempts to kind of tie it to one political party rather than the other, with the attendant political fallout that entails?
Well, it is unfortunate that especially the Chevrolet Volt became the target of the right-wing propaganda machine. And I have to say, in full disclosure, I'm a conservative myself, which is why I found it doubly disappointing that Bill O'Reilly, Lou Dobbs, and everything spread these fictions about Volts catching fire and describing it as a typical product of the socialist Obama administration, when, in fact, we showed the first Chevy Volt prototype in January of 07, and last I checked, Obama was elected in November of 08, so it's hardly an Obama car. It is unfortunate, and there is a coalition or a group called Energy Security for America or something like that. It's two former Marine commandants, Fred Smith of FedEx, myself, and we've spent quite a bit of time in Washington visiting conservative think tanks like the Hudson Institute and the Standard. We actually got an audience with Charles Krauthammer, a certified conservative intellectual, and we tried to explain to them there is nothing left-wing and nothing socialistically sinister about energy security for the United States. And and we just have to. It just makes all the sense in the world when we're still importing about roughly 40 to 45% of petroleum, and most of it comes from regions that are hostile to the United States. Why should we remain hostage to these people? So I think I believe that my blogging on the Forbes.com blog and my various appearances on television, where I essentially called Bill O'Reilly and Rush Limbaugh out, did trigger a sort of reaction where suddenly Fox News did a program that was kind of favorable to the Volt. And I think what it is those of us who have a voice, and collectively it's all of us, we have to speak up for the rational aspects of the electric vehicle. And you see, the minute you throw CO2, save the planet, and global warming into the equation, you lose about 60 to 70% of the public, and you lose the entire conservative movement. So that's the one to stay away from. The one to be on, however, is energy security and efficiency of the American transportation system, because the more efficient transportation is, the more it drives benefits for the economy. The country, that's one of the reasons why the U.S. has always done well economically, is because we've always had low-price fuel. And electricity, generated properly through natural gas, can easily be the low-cost fuel of the future.
And Andy Palmer, how do you deal with my colleagues in the media who have devoted an enormous amount of ink, for example, to one fire on the Chevy Volt, but don't pick up their pens and hardly ever write about the 187,000 fires that took place in gas-powered vehicles last year? So how do you deal with that kind of a media atmosphere?
Carefully. I mean, the hysteria around the battery issues was laughable, frankly. I mean, there's no credibility behind it. I mean, we all know that, you know, certainly we did, and I'm sure that General Motors spent an enormous amount of energy making sure that the battery is safe in the car. I mean, certainly in the case of the Leaf, I know that it's an integral part of the infrastructure of the car, and it aids and abets in a crash, for example. It's part of the safety of the car itself. Now, you're always going to have journalists looking for an angle. That's their job, I guess. That's your job. Some of those guys have an agenda, for sure. And I think it's our job to calmly explain the facts, and the facts as we see it. So the good news for me is that the more that people ask the questions, the more that you have the chatter, the more familiar people come with the electric car and start to take it as a good argument. So in most cases, I welcome the questions, and I welcome the debate. Once in a while I get kind of pissed off with some of the questions, and I'm quoted as in one, I think it was the Sydney Times, the guy that asked me for about the 50th time about, does an electric car just move the CO2 problem from the car to the electric generation? Oh God, again? That's bullshit, man. And managed to get the headlines of the Sydney Post at the time, but. The debate is welcome. The debate is about educating people.
Well, we are encouraging your genteel questions via Twitter. Use the hashtag EVS26. I'm going to get to them in just a second because they're beginning to stack up here. But Dean Devlin, first of all, we're in Los Angeles. Let's talk about the role the entertainment business can play, is playing in winning over hearts and minds. You see EVs now in TV shows, Hollywood movies. They make model EVs for kids to buy in toy stores. Is the EV becoming enough of a cultural icon? Is it moving into the realm of cool?
Slowly. And I think we'd all agree on this panel that it is gravity, that it's really a matter of time. The question is, how fast? And what can we do to accelerate that? But this is happening. This is going to happen. It has to happen. So I think, you know, when you're trying to do something cool in a show, you want to show things that are futuristic. You want to show things that make people go, ooh, I want that. I want to be part of that. You know, in the last few years, you saw less laptops and more tablets because it seemed cooler. So, yeah, we want to embrace it for selfish reasons because it makes our shows cooler, and then also because a lot of us like these cars. But, you know, forgive me for being a dog with a bone on the marketing issue, but, you know, I couldn't agree more with Bob that this is not a right-left issue. You know, when I made Who Killed the Electric Car, there were just as many people on the left and on the right that wanted to talk about this, and the enthusiasm was on both sides. But when we frame the car as medicine, I think we invite politicizing it. When we say, this is good for you, you should do this because it is a good thing to do, it's not even accurate. I mean, it's a great byproduct that it's good for you. But the truth is, this is a great car. This is the technology we should be using for a variety of reasons. Mostly because you're going to enjoy this car more. It's going to be better for your lifestyle. And I think we have to really start reframing how we market them, how we talk about them, how we promote them, because I think it does invite politicizing. And it shouldn't be. There's absolutely no reason for this to be a left-right issue.
Scott, the video games industry creates or helps enhance the sense of cool for a number of products. You see EVs cropping up in video games now. Are we going to see more of that? And what role can the gaming industry play?
EVs in video games, yeah, but I'd actually like to swap it around. I want to have access to your display and to your display and actually make games for cars. There's a lot of really cool things we can do that just, there's lots of regulation issues I understand, but if you can carve out a component where I can actually write a game for your car, you'll see a lot of really cool stuff.
I hope my kids are watching. I hope my wife isn't watching. Let's get to some of the questions that we're getting from Twitter, and we're getting quite a few of them. The hashtag again is EVS26. Let me put this to Bob first of all. How important is DC fast charging? When will it become a reality?
Well, that's outside the realm of my technical expertise, and it is. I don't think anybody. You'd need somebody in the charging industry to answer that question accurately. So I'm not even going to try. I think fast charging is going to help. The downsides of fast charging, of course, is that a certain amount of energy needs to be put into the car. When you put that energy in over a 4 to 8 hour time period, it is a trickle of energy that doesn't put a huge immediate load on the network. If you cram that same amount of energy in 5 to 10 minutes, you're obviously causing a peak draw. And the question is, how many fast chargers can the grid handle at any one time? My second point, though, is, and it's related to the battery thing again, and I know I'm tiresome on this subject, but I'll say it again anyway. When we get energy storage of the next generation of lithium sulfur or lithium air batteries up to the point where the battery pack can store 350 to 400 miles, and every morning when you wake up, you unplug the vehicle and you've got 400 miles in the tank, then my question is, who needs fast charging? So I think fast charging is like the range extender engine in the Chevy Volt or the upcoming BMW i3 or the Audi e-tronic or even the range extending engine in the Via pickup trucks. It's an interim solution to make the currently limited battery capacity more acceptable to the public. It's a Band-Aid, if you will, to cover up the fact that the batteries can't quite carry the load right now. Once the batteries are up to 300, 400 miles per charge at a reasonable price, all of this is going to go away.
Andy, there's been a lot of discussion here this week about competing charging standards. We're getting a lot of questions about them as well. Why the competing standards? Where does Nissan come down on that?
I guess it's somewhere a failure of the industry that we can't get one plug. I guess it's not just our industry, it's the electric industry, but it's a shame. It's a shame, frankly speaking. We've obviously got the CHAdeMO standard in Japan. We're using the CHAdeMO standard everywhere. You've obviously got the debate going on in Europe right now with the ASIA standard. Fortunately, after a lot of debate, CHAdeMO has also been included in that standard, so that's at least one can imagine probably 2 cables. I understand there's a debate going on with the SAE standard here. There's a debate going on in China. I think basically I mean, the industry has an obligation to try to standardize. And if we can't standardize, then at least you can imagine, as is true when you go to a gas station where you've got unleaded gas, leaded gas, and diesel. Maybe you've got two or three different cables. If that's the best we can do, but I think we have to try, and we have an obligation to try to make a standard if we can.
Scott, a question for you. You are not a soccer mum. But you were telling me before we came out that you were one of the first early adopters of the original Toyota RAV4, and of course Toyota here has unveiled the new version of the electric RAV4. And we've got a question that says, when will EVs be big enough for soccer mums? Do you feel when you were driving the original RAV4, when you've been driving other EVs, size compromised?
No, but I don't have a whole group of kids going to soccer practice. I'd say that the RAV4, the original RAV4 EV, is perfectly large for 4 or 5 people, no problem, with plenty of stuff in the back. Might not quite be minivan style, which is what we have here in the U.S., but I don't see why it can't be. I mean, the larger the vehicle, the more space we actually have for batteries. There's no reason why we can't have that at this point.
But Bob, with the American desire for large cars, certainly larger cars than those of us from Europe have traditionally driven, does the industry have to respond to that question?
Yeah, and it is responding, but the current response is such as demonstrated by VIA Motors in the full-size pickup trucks, full-size sport utilities, and full-size vans, because let's face it, all other things being equal, the big trucks is what the American public likes to drive. They're just going to be basically mandated out of existence by future fuel economy legislation unless they can be electrified. And the VIA products are very much like the Chevrolet Volt. It's 40 or 50 miles purely electric, and then you have several hundred more miles on the range extender engine. That would, just like the Chevrolet Volt, provide fuel-free driving for most people most of the time. So again, until the batteries can deliver the 300 or 400 mile range, a limited electric range plus a range extending gasoline generator is the solution, I think, for the next 10 or 15 years. And I know a number of people are working on it, but VIA actually has demonstration units in a lot of the large fleets already. So the answer to the question is really when will there be one large enough for a soccer mom? Well, if a Chevy Suburban is large enough for soccer moms, the answer is next year about this time.
Terrific. Dean, here's a question for you. What single sentence, this will get to the creative issue you were raising earlier, what single sentence best describes the fun factor of driving an EV?
Single sentence. I don't know if I could boil it to a single sentence, but I think that it's a lifestyle. It's ease. It's the future. It's modern. You know, I said earlier, I really think electric cars should be sold like iPads. And you know, what's interesting when you watch ads like for the iPads, they don't talk about the A5 chip. They don't talk about how much memory it has. They talk about how it changes your life, your daily life, and why it's fun, why you can do things you couldn't do before. And in my life, I find it enhanced that I drive electric cars. I have a RAV4. I also have a faster Tesla. And I get great joy from this car. I like that I don't have to go to gas stations and get gas on my hands. You know, there's a lot of things about this that suggest the future, that suggests where we're going. And you know, the interesting thing is that you know, people are actually willing to take a product that's not quite there yet if they think it's really fun. You know, they'll take limitations. You know, an iPad isn't as good as your laptop. It's not stopping them getting sold. You know, I think messaging is important, and I think that you know, the entertainment industry can help, and we're trying. I think the auto industry can help a lot by thinking of it more like selling a car and not medicine. And I think what we have to start thinking about is not just the benefit of what it does for the world, which is great, you know, that's fantastic, but also what it does for your life, you know, why your life is better doing it. And the more we start to get that messaging out, the more people are going to embrace it. I think, you know, on the other question about when will the EVs be big enough for soccer moms, well, I think that's really going to be about demand. The technology's there. I mean, you know, back in 2006 when we were doing Who Killed the Electric Car, we found that the Army had electric tanks to be used in certain situations when they wanted them to be silent. An electric tank? You can power a tank with electric? Well, if you can power a tank, we can power... You know, but I think aside from the technological challenges, which have been very eloquently detailed here, I think it's also about demand. Because, I mean, we all remember what cell phones looked like 15 years ago.
Exactly.
And look what they look like now. The demand was there, that pushed the development, that pushes innovation. The more there's demand, the more people are going to be working on this.
So, Andy, here's a question for you from Twitter. How do automakers go all in on promoting EVs when they make most of their dollars on gas cars? I suspect you would argue Nissan is all in, but are there sufficient other manufacturers beyond Nissan, GM, Tesla, and a handful of others that are really serious about going all in?
Well, I mean, all in, we spent $4 billion developing Leafs, so I guess we're all in. I guess Nissan making that move and Chevy making that move has stimulated the market. You see, you walk around an auto show these days, you pretty much see an electric car on most of the stands. So I guess we started the conversation, and it's moving in this direction. By the way, I mean, I don't see EVs ultimately being non-profit making. I don't see that at all. I mean, at least as far as I see internally, there's no reason through the life cycle of Leaf why we shouldn't have a profitable car. I think many of you know my boss. He's not a guy that will be very charitable with me if the car doesn't make any money. So I mean, our economics. Our volume, the reason we invested so much money in, the capacity of 500,000 batteries a year, is that we needed economies of scale, and economies of scale drives down the cost. Improves the profitability, and I see no reason at all why electric vehicles shouldn't be profitable.
And Bob Lutz, if we are about to see a seismic shift in the marketplace, how does the industry handle demand while production is still, by definition, limited? I mean, that's quite a challenge, isn't it?
Well, look, the questioner is that how do automobile companies go all in when they're still making most of their money on? This is this popular fiction that automobile companies decide what the public should buy and then kind of motivate the public or force the public or drive the public to buy it. I'll tell you, automotive marketing would be a lot simpler if that's the way it actually worked. What it actually is demand drives what is built. And let's face it, I mean, we may all be fans of electrification, but I'm afraid that we're getting slightly ahead of ourselves because we're constantly talking among ourselves out there. 95% of the public still wants gasoline-powered cars. And as long as that's the case, that's what the car companies are going to provide predominantly. Now, when that shifts and it becomes 10%, 15%, 20%, and that's got to be demand-driven. That demand is going to be driven by improvements in the electric vehicle, increases in range, reduction in price. And when that happens, the car companies will adjust supply to demand. They've always done that. That'll happen, and that's not a problem. But the issue right now is we as automobile producers are still addressing a limited audience.
Scott Cronce, let me ask you a question, not as a video game manufacturer, but as an early adopter. How do you want to be used by the industry? Do you want to be used by the industry as an ambassador, and how can they best use early adopters?
Let's see. Sure, I'd love to be used as an ambassador. Just give me a really cool, brand new, sexy car. But I think one of the things that people have to start viewing is electric vehicles as entertainment, whether it's style. So you go, wow, that car looks fast, and it is fast, or wow, that car is futuristic. I've got my personal assistant in there. I can press a button and start talking, get all my office stuff done. All the things that we thought we would have by now, we can actually do today. And so, I'd say move us from an economy box that you're trying to get for your son or daughter to a car that anybody's going to want to buy. I mean, I think Tesla did a pretty good job with that, with you saying, that's a fast car. Well, that's a really fast car, and that's a sexy car. And there's lots of other forms of that in the entertainment space and the lifestyle space that we can get into. Sure, I'd love to help. Just give me a car to drive.
We'll see what we can do. There was a question that came in a little bit earlier on Twitter that I think could be answered yes or no, or you could develop it. Andy, do you think EVs are going to ever have solar cells on them for recharging?
Leaf today. You can have a small solar panel. I guess the essence of the question is, can you charge the car completely? And the answer is no. But certainly you can get a little bit of energy from a solar panel that's on the spoiler today. But the majority of the benefit, or the majority of the work for preserving the energy in the car, it comes through weight reduction, it comes through aerodynamics, it comes through energy density in the battery. and everything else is then just tweaks, and the solar panel adds a little bit of energy, but not a lot.
Bob Lutz, what do you think of the various EV startups? Asks a questioner via Twitter. Are any of them doing it right besides VIA?
Well, obviously, VIA is doing it righter than anybody else, but I don't like to comment on competitors, and I think all of the startups are doing the best they can. It's very clear that Fisker has a brilliant car, but they've got some financial difficulties and maybe some technical difficulties which will be resolved. Tesla, I think, is off to a great start with the Model S, and I wish them luck. And they're going to be joined by a lot of, but the problem with the smaller manufacturers is ultimately the big companies are all going to bring out fully electric cars. I mean, BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Audi, General Motors, Ford, everybody is going to have fully electric, sexy, really good-looking, fast EVs. And then the specialists, the sort of small companies, I think, are going to, 5 or 6 years from now, they may have a tough row to hoe. But in the meantime, they're fine. One on solar panels. One of my dreams, one of the reasons the Chevy Volt roof is black, is we were going to do it all in solar panels. And we looked at, with the current energy transference of photovoltaic cells, the guys explained to me, in the brilliant Arizona sunshine on the parking lot, you might create enough electrical energy to drive a fan to blow the hot air out of the car while it's on the parking lot, thus lessening the load on the air conditioning system when the guy gets in. And the amount of energy saved is infinitesimal. So the idea of solar panels on the car that provide enough energy to drive the car is pure utopia. And unless there is like 100-fold increase in the energy transference of photovoltaic cells, it's just not going to happen.
Dean, we've got a question asking, GM and Nissan are all in. Why are the others holding back? I actually want to ask you that question in the context of your work on Who Killed the Electric Car. As you observe this industry now, do you feel it's in a seismically different place than it was when you made that film?
Oh, absolutely. And thanks to some of the people sitting up here. At the time we went to make the film, the electric car, in my opinion, was dead. And it didn't seem like there was any real movement to bring it back. And I'm happy to have been wrong, I mean, I think it took enormous courage of what Nissan has done. The Volt was a huge step forward. And a compliment to that whole team is, we had made a movie that was incredibly critical of General Motors, and very early on in the Volt, they invited all of us to come and look at the car and to critique it. And I thought that was courageous and smart, because they knew that we weren't going to say something just to be nice. If we liked it, we were going to say it, and if we didn't, we were going to be critical. And I thought that was a real commitment at that point. As for this question, again, I think it's gravity. I think it's a matter of time. I think they all will be. But it does take courage to be out there early. I think it took courage to commit as much resources as Nissan has. I think it took a lot of courage to get behind the Volt in the way they have. Someone said something once to me that the Titanic didn't hit the iceberg because it didn't see it. The Titanic hit the iceberg because it takes a long time to turn a really, really big boat. And this is a big industry, and it takes a long time to turn it. And there's a lot of things that have to happen. I think GM and Nissan took big risks to do this, and I think they're going to get big rewards for it ultimately.
Andy Palmer, where you live, it's the middle of the night. There are some people in that part of the world watching the webcast, and they emailed me a little bit earlier on in the day and said, find out what Andy Palmer thinks about market penetration for EVs, specifically in Asia. How do you see that playing out?
Good evening to everybody in Japan. I know how you're feeling. Well, I mean, Asia is clearly one of the big markets. Japan has had a good uptake of electric car, both Leaf and the Mitsubishi car. But probably the interesting area the interesting debate is China. China is publicly committed to growth of electric cars. We're yet to see really how that plays out, how that investment goes city by city, and basically how the standard works. Obviously, we're going to bring an electric car to China relatively shortly. We're prohibited. There are certain prohibitions to what we do. For example, we can't bring it as a Nissan. We have to bring it as a Nusia, which is a bit of a pity, because obviously Leaf is one of the icons of our brand. So we have to conform with regulation. But I guess I would say that probably China is the big question and probably the big opportunity, and that can be one of the places where one can really drive volume. And if we can drive volume, then the economics start to work, and when the economics start to work, car companies make money, and when car companies make money, then they start investing more into the electric car, and that's when the boat gets turned.
We're almost out of time. I want to end with a quick lightning round. There's been a lot of talk here this week about EVs going mainstream. My question is, how do we know when they've gone mainstream? Andy Palmer, what is the one thing that is going to tell you one day the Leaf is mainstream now?
I thought it was.
That's a great answer.
Just add one to that. I asked my team to take all of the nameplates of cars around the world. So whether it's the Tida or whether it's the Micra or whatever, and list them all up, and then write the annual volume next to them. And there's a huge long list of cars that are made around the world with all of their volumes. And you look at where Leaf is, and it's in the top 25%. It's in the top 25, but today it's in the top 20. Well, it tells you there's an awful lot of cars with a very low volume, but it's 25%. The Leaf is no longer a niche car. It's in the top 25%, and we haven't even started yet.
Terrific. Dean Devlin, very quickly, how are you going to know it's mainstream?
When the type of fuel used to propel a car is much less important than the car itself.
Scott Cronce?
When I have to reserve a charging spot, which I do at work right now.
And Bob Lutz?
When the price value of EVs versus gasoline-powered cars favors EVs.
I want to thank you all for being here today. Thanks to everyone here in Los Angeles and around the world for submitting questions to the panel. Thanks very much.
What a fantastic panel. Let's give them one more hand. Well, one of the things that's fun, and I think one of the things that makes us successful as a community, is that we're always reaching out more broadly, because we know we can't do this just with technology, and we can't do this just with policy. We're going to need a lot of creative ideas and a huge amount of goodwill. So this is the next stage in the conversation that we have going on. We are going to be doing a lot more of this, hearts and minds, and we are going to be working with people in the entertainment business, people that are EV enthusiasts, leveraging their views, their creativity to reach out on a broader basis. We know what we need to do in the future. We know who it is that we're trying to influence, and we know what a great product that we've got. So speaking of the future, EVS is heading to Europe next, and I have the honor to serve.